These days, it feels like everyone's got an agenda, and finding the truth in the news is harder than ever. Mainstream media, alternative sources, opinion pieces. How do we know what is legit? In today's episode of the Paul Begley podcast, we're joined by freelance journalist Bart B.C. Begley as he helps us break down the messy world of modern journalism, why fact-checking matters, how media biases shape what we see, and whether AI tools can really be useful to help us get to the facts. Plus, we'll talk about how independent journalism is shaking things up and why quick, snappy news might actually be the future. So if you're tired of the noise and want to get better at spotting the real story, stick around because we've got a lot to unpack today. Our guest today is B.C. Begley. B.C. is a freelance journalist, popular for his facts-only publications on YouTube, Patreon, and Rumble. He produces short news covering world news, U.S. news, politics, business, technology, space news, and archaeology. In addition to video content, he also creates short historical documentaries and writes original news articles published on his website at bcbegley.com. Additionally, BC is also a key contributor to Paul Begley Prophecy. BC, Bart, we're also gonna call him as well because he's my second oldest brother. So welcome to the show, Bart.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot of different things that I was following on your website. The YouTube videos actually I think are breath of fresh air because most of them are less than 2 minutes long from what I've been seeing. But for me, I like to watch a lot of your videos and actually repost them on the podcast's Twitter as well because it's very difficult now to kind of navigate and see what's real and what isn't real anymore. Most of the time, if you're obviously if you go to a mainstream media website or just turn on the TV, most of it is political commentary. You're not really getting the news like you'll see on the local news, but even if you tune into the local news, a lot of that is still just operated from the parent company. So a lot of the sound bites and things are pushed down to them about what they can actually say and address.
Right.
I like to look at a lot of Twitter to try to find news because, I mean, you're going to hear a lot more things than just whatever the main parent company is pushing down to all the other networks. But the problem with looking at Twitter and or any other social media accounts is most of that stuff, I would say probably 90% of that is not verified or not verifiable information. So it's a lot of people that may have some sort of idea or some clue, but most of that is not verifiable. So I guess my first question for you, BC, is what are some of the news sources that you use when you're producing your content? Do you still use mainstream media, internet, print, newspaper? Where do you get your facts and information from?
Okay. So to start, it's a little. Most people just consume the news. They don't really have any. It's kind of hard behind the scenes how they produce the news and present it to the consumer. Most people are just. They live a fast-paced lifestyle. They're just consuming the news.
Right.
Not really looking at it from a 300-degree view, zoom out view. When you're making the news, what I've kind of noticed is that the propaganda or the bias or the narratives that are put in there, it's really creatively done. They write an article with facts, and then in between the facts, as soon as they read a fact, they'll put a comma and then they'll put an opinion line. That's all it is. It's like opinion commentary.
Right.
So when you're reading the news, when you're consuming it, they'll say, they'll say something like like Trump said this, and that's a fact. Trump did say that. And then right after they say that, they'll say, and here's what that may mean or may not mean.
Right.
So it's like a biased narrative that they're putting in there. So you got to dissect that. So when I look for sources, mainstream news outlets like the Associated Press or Reuters or CNN or MSNBC or anything like that, you got to be careful because they're notorious for putting these bias or narratives or opinion pieces, little snippets after they present facts, even if it's been like reporting on like the rebels from Rwanda that conquered Goma this week, even something like that, talking about Congolese military rebels. You have to watch out for the what I call little landmines that they put into the article.
Mm.
When I create my news, I attempt to take all that out, and I just want the facts. And when you take all that out, your article is half the size that it was when you're reading it, and it won't take as long to present in a video form. On CNN, they're taking 3 minutes, 4 minutes to tell you about a story, whereas I take less than 2. And it's because of all the opinion narratives that are interwoven in between the facts. So you can trust mainstream media as far as facts, information go, but the average person isn't going to take the time to dissect the opinion narratives or the bias. They're just going to consume the whole article and just roll with it. And
Right.
there's not, just because somebody gives an opinion doesn't mean it's a fact. You know what I mean? So you have to be careful with how that all works. But I also use alternative media like Breitbart or the Washington Times or the Washington Examiner or even RT, Russia Today, or the South China Morning Post, any type of Al Jazeera, stuff that the mainstream media doesn't really like over here, I'll still use as a source. They got reporters on the ground. They're doing the groundwork. Even those people have bias and narratives interwoven into the facts of the article.
Right.
Uh, so I'm just looking for the facts because in the world of content creation with the news, every single news agency is doing the same thing. The lack of originality is stunning, but they're all just reporting facts and interwoven it with bias or narratives for whatever reason. And uh, it's kind of diluting the presentation to the viewer that he receives when he's watching the news. I grew up watching WGN in Chicago. And back in the 90s, when they did their news, they would do like local news for the first 10 minutes, go to commercial break, and then come back to do world news. But it didn't matter because they were just they would have 2 anchors, and one anchor would spend 50 seconds and he would roll through a story, and then he'd pass it off to the second anchor. They'd roll through a story in a minute, they'd pass it up. They kept doing that, passing it up. They would get through 15 stories in 10 minutes, or whatever, 10 stories in 10 minutes, go to a commercial, come back and do it for world news. There was less propaganda. It was just more, how many news stories can we feed to the viewer today?
Right.
In my approach to the news, I kind of liked that presentation because I still remember. Of course, WGN ain't like that anymore, but I kind of remember that. So that's my approach, as many as I can, just really fast. No bias, none of that. Just here's a story. Here's the facts of the story. Now let's go to the next story. Let's go to the next story. And the viewer is intelligent enough to form his or her own opinion. They can say whether or not they believe the facts of or the story, or they think there's bias here or there. They don't need me to tell them. You know what I mean? That's what CNN and they all do when we watch these shows on Fox or MSNBC. It's like, here's the facts of the article. Now let me tell you how to feel about it. That's where the bias and the propaganda, if you will, comes in. Right.
And I mean, so when you were talking about the WGN format back in the 90s, I mean, I think maybe the last news source that I thought was trying to do that, still the same formula of just here's a top story, and here's the next one. No political commentary, no bought by an advertiser, so we have to skew your view of how you consume the news. But I think was headline news, from what I remember. Headline news, I think when they first came out, and I think that's a CNN company as well. That was pretty much the whole goal of it, was to hit you with a top news story, no political commentary, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, next story. But that didn't last very long. I think that was the goal of headline news when it came out, but maybe it was just I'm not really sure. I know advertisers have a lot to do with how news is consumed and how it's presented to the viewer as well. But also ratings, right? So when headline news kind of made that shift, you had MSNBC and Fox News and CNN had their lead anchor prime time, and that was pretty much their whole show. They would pick in, cherry pick stories, share with the viewer, and then have their political commentary the entire time for it.
I think it's also, and this is really great analysis by Bart, which you're sharing, you and Drew both. And, and that's kind of why I like, Bart, I really like having your videos on my YouTube channel blending in, because I do, as you guys know, I take it and look at it from a biblical perspective. So you got Fox doing it from a conservative perspective. You have CNN they used to try to be independent, but they basically went far left. And then you had MSNBC who went far, far left.
Right.
And so I come at it from, okay, I'm going to go at it from a biblical perspective, which is still right of center. But at the same time, it's good to put yours in there, because yours is just, here's the news. Here's it's sort of like the headline news. And people like that because it gives them a variety. They get a little better, more variety, a little more volume of current events, because yours are going to be short and precise and not opinionated. And you guys are right. I do the same as you, Bart, and that is, I literally scour the world, from the Blaze to the Breitbarts to the Hill, to some of these conservative sides. And then I also go and check out Reuters, of course, and AP, the Associated Press, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN. But then I'll go over and grab the guys from, the South China or the China Morning News, and the European stuff like The Guardian and some of the tabloid guys. And then I'll run over and grab Al Jazeera. I'll run over and grab everybody. Yeah, the
British tabloids are definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, they used to put me in a lot of those, but they really are. I like to do it, and I'm gonna give you an example. I was just looking at, Trump's kind of rocked the world with this Gaza announcement, right?
Right.
And so I was just reading all of the different world leader reactions to what Trump said, and their interpretation of what Trump meant. And I even went and looked at some of the Republican congressional response and his cabinet members' response, and there ain't hardly two that agree. Everybody has a different concept and ideal of what he was saying. Some say that America's going to annex Gaza. Some say U.S. is sending troops in. Some say that Israel will be in charge, but America's going to do this. Some say that Saudi Arabia is going to actually fund it all. Really, there is an absolute mishmash of. There's no way to know what the real story is here, because everyone's got a different opinion, from the world leaders to the media. So it's really, what does it mean? And I think until there's an official word really out of the White House and that deciphers what Trump was trying to say. And a lot of times, don't you guys think that Trump talks in vague purposely to allow for negotiation? Do you think that, BC?
Yeah, I do. I think he was purposely vague because he was opening up a negotiation. And we got to understand, we don't know what was talked about between him and Netanyahu in the room.
Right.
I've seen videos on X where the look on Netanyahu's face when he initially brought that up was shock. So I don't think they talked about that. I think this was a play to say early and establish something. probably for negotiation purposes, and it was purposely vague for that reason.
I mean, obviously, the one point he wanted to get across was that the Palestinians need to leave Gaza and put half of them in Egypt and half of them in Jordan, and give them some pretty nice refugee area to the best of their ability, and then clean out, and try to rebuild Gaza. But his whole point was they need to go over here. I think that was his main point. How it all worked, he didn't want to get into the weeds, but that was his point. And that is huge. They don't want to leave. I mean, that is gigantic to make that statement. Yeah, I think you're right.
Also, Trump's playing a deeper chess game than most people know. I think that for the past 2 weeks, this guy's been going at breakneck speed.
Yeah, that's true.
And you've got Elon Musk over there with USAID or USAID, and you've got 300, 400 executive orders for all these different things. You've got Tom Homan and the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth on the border, thousands of troops. The media, the left-wing media, is having a hard time.
They can't keep up.
Picking which one to focus on.
They can't keep up. No.
And then to take all the oxygen away from that, he drops this Gaza bombshell.
Yep.
And he's like, okay, now focus on this, while we just continue this breakneck speed at America First policy that he's.
That's a very good opinion of that.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for everybody really to kind of see everything that's going on. Like, first 100 days of a new president taking office is always breakneck speed, for the most part. But when you have somebody that, sleeps like 5-6 hours a day, and then he just comes in and he's barking orders, right? Taking charge of the whole cabinet, trying to get appointees in, which there's so many things going on and so many executive orders taking place and changes of leadership in different cabinets, different members. And then also you have, I hate to say it because I can't stand the two-party system, but you always have this struggle between who's actually in office and then the opposing side. So Democrats in this case, always trying to delay, always trying to not confirm.
That's funny you said that.
Members as well.
It's funny you said that, Drew, because Israel Hall, who's producing the podcast, just sent me a text that says, breaking news, Democrats have delayed Kash Patel's committee vote by 1 week. So
right,
he can't even get out of committee yet. Now they've delayed him another week. Yeah. So to your point, Drew, delay. It's kind of their only strategy they have, I think, at this moment.
Right. So, BC, I wanted to go back to you and a couple questions for you. So what got you started and interested in news content creation? And have you always been interested in current events?
I've always been interested in current events. I've watched the news my whole life, no matter what age I was. Started real young, but I've always watched the news, mainly local news, and I've also read the newspaper back in the day a lot. So I was always interested in current events. I never thought I would be a journalist or make content or a content creator.
Right.
I got started in that was Dad, Pastor Paul, started his YouTube channel back in 2010 when YouTube was fairly new. It was only a few years old at the time. And just watching him do it, and then just helping him behind the scenes. And he focuses on, when he does a show, he focuses on current events with a biblical perspective. So news stories of the day are always in his show. So he was always scouring the internet, looking for news stories, looking for content to talk about. And it was just fun to help him do it. And then just watching him put together a show or a video and put it out there, and I just started getting interested in like editing, and my mind started to go where maybe I could just write my own articles, record the audio, and then make my own video on like an editing software. So that's what got me interested in it, was just watching Dad do his thing on YouTube and just helping him with getting stories and stuff like that.
Okay. And so there's a lot that goes into actually, reading, writing, and then producing video content as well. Which of all of those three elements, would you say that you like one of them more than the other ones, or it all kind of flows together?
Now it all kind of flows together. I did like writing articles the best. It's just fun to take sources and rewrite your own thing with your own flair behind it. Take out the opinions, cite the source. I like that. I liked writing articles. But now that I write the articles and then I read the articles that and record it as audio for an audio track, and then I overlay those with videos or still pictures. Right. And now the whole process of writing, doing the audio, putting the video together is kind of just goes together now. It kind of flows together. So it's all kind of part of my process now.
Bart,
go ahead, Pastor.
Bart, also, I know you do documentaries. We could talk about that in a minute. But since you're on this vein about gathering information and writing your own articles, so what does AI GPT mean to you? I mean, is this a tool that can be utilized, or is this taking away creativity from individuals? I mean, how do you see AI?
Well, you can't really use AI, no matter which AI, to rewrite an article for you, because it's not that intelligent, and it phrases it in a way that you could tell is AI.
Yeah.
It doesn't take the opinions or narratives out, so it's just leaving that in there, which is that's not what I want in the first place. I do a better job just taking it out myself,
right,
and rewriting and switching up, just citing the facts,
Right.
But I do use it for proofreading, because you can just copy what you wrote, feed it into AI, and it will structure it the way it's supposed to be structured.
Yeah,
it's like in a second. Like
right.
That's incredible.
Yeah, I like the structuring. I don't want them to give me its opinion. I just want it, once I give it an opinion, the few times I've used it, I'll give it what I want it, and then I'll let it structure it, because it can structure it absolutely dead on. I mean, really well done professionally. But it only does
like handing it to an English teacher.
It really does. But you just don't want it to write for you. You want to write it and then let it just structure the grammar and make it flow.
Well, because they're a few years behind. AI is not advanced to yesterday. If you ask AI about Trump and Gaza, it
don't even know about it. No, it don't know.
You got to feed it that information, and then it will tell you an opinion on it. So it's a few years behind. So if you're trying to get it to do all the work, it's not gonna.
Well,
it ain't caught up that.
Well, to that point, you're right. What we got to work with, what they've given us as the public to work with, is behind, a couple years behind. But when we just did this webinar and we had John, the AI expert, on, who actually showed you the AI 4.0. He actually, because he's actually part of the Stargate thing. I was interviewing him from the White House, and he showed us what AI 4.0 could do. And that's a whole game changer. It's up to the minute. So everything happening in the news, it's already on it. And
that is a change.
But they haven't given that to us yet. Okay.
Right.
So to your point, you can't let AI completely research for you. I see Google's trying to do that right now. Have you guys noticed when you Google and AI generative comes out there and tries to tell you? And I'm thinking, you're behind, dude. You're still behind. You're not given all the facts. So anyway, I just want to jump in. Paul, go ahead. I'm sorry for jumping in on that.
No, that's fine. I mean, that's some of the things, like, I feel like it's with the advancement of AI, and pretty much any website you go to now, they have their little AI assistant in the corner. It's like, hey, do you want me to just go ahead and scan the whole thing for you and summarize it? I think that's really,
I don't like that.
It's kind of like it's kind of like my view on having a cell phone with you at all time, right? Instead of just having a conversation like we used to back in the day, as they say, without a cell phone, you wouldn't just pause the conversation and fact check somebody on the spot.
No.
But that it's it kind of limits a lot of people's skills when they go to different websites, and you're not actually reading and critically thinking about the information that's being presented to you. You're just letting the computer tell you.
And
Yes.
if you go there and you click summarize this article, the problem is it's still summarizing the opinions, the bias, and the narrative.
Yeah,
Right.
you're right.
Wow. It without the human element of me being like, this line is propaganda, I'm not going to read this.
Right.
I mean, without that element, you're not getting just straight facts. You're still dealing with, and it's sad to say, but 99% of every news media that I touch is built this same way. They all have opinions and narratives. I'm not trying to say I'm the only one, but I'm like a lost ball on high weeds. There's not many of us, you know what I mean?
Right.
Who are taking out the opinions and the narratives. Most people are, opinion commentary. They're trying to give their opinions. Everybody has their little show and they're trying to give their opinion. So that whole field is just really crowded. So I think there's an avenue for my content, because it's not crowded, but you got to be careful to not mess up and put their bias and their narratives in your video, because then you're just the same as everybody else. There's no differentiate.
So it's hard to find out what is the truth and what isn't. And so you're trying to, and for you,
Careful, yeah.
and what you do, of course, is just the facts. You're just trying to give us the facts. And that's hard to find because everything, there's so many parrots out there and there's so much echo noise that, there's so much, it's an echo chamber. And even though I am a content guy, which basically, I'm an opinionated guy, that's kind of what I do. When I started doing that 15 years ago, it
was way less.
Yeah. Look, I was the first preacher on YouTube 15 years ago. There was nobody even taking current events and even hardly talking about it. None of the mainstream media even had a YouTube channel. Now the room is way too crowded. And so what you've done is you've identified a different alley, which is old school, which is going back to just the facts.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about your videos is that I can just go there and listen to what you have to say. I know I'm just going to get, you're going to be right about 95% of your facts are going to be correct. And the only reason not 100 is because somebody got an opinion in there and turned it into facts. Somebody told the lie long enough that it became factual, right?
And just basic human error. I'm not a guy.
No, right.
But I even down to my voice, when I do my narration on my video, it's old school. In my mind, I'm trying to sound like Harry Collis. Do you guys know who that is?
I remember that. Yeah, I do.
Used to be the the Philadelphia Phillies play-by-play.
Yeah, the pitcher. He was the sportscaster is what he was.
And
right.
He did the old NFL films, This Week in the NFL or This Week in Football or whatever. So if you go and just YouTube Harry Collis and kind of listen to his voice, you'll see why I've got this monotone, because that's what I'm wanting to sound like. His voice is incredible. So everything about it is old school, from the format to the voice to I like that better. I don't, when I watch CNN and I see an hour of CNN, I see five stories. Now they've dragged it out over an hour, and then the very next hour is the same 5 stories.
Yeah, it kills you. It just kills you what they do.
Yeah.
All of them, Fox, CNN, and MSNBC, they just wear you out with that.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think even with, you described it as monotone, I think there's actually a lot of value in that as well. You're not putting in inflection points on certain things that you're talking about as well. So it's another element as well, may even be subliminal to a lot of the viewers. There's another element of just factual content, no inflection points. Don't pay attention to certain points of it. Just here's the facts that you wanted to consume. But that brings me to another question we wrote out for you. And how do you? So, I think I was talking about this earlier. It's very hard to find factual information, and who can you trust and who can't you trust. How do you verify facts and misinformation or propaganda? from the sources that you're looking at before you write an article?
For me, it's three sources. Now, I don't cite all three sources in my videos. I could. It's a lot of typing. It would take longer. And when you're doing 26 videos a day, it's crazy. So I use my primary source that I cite. But when I go and I research, okay, 23 people got killed in a train accident in India. I'm just using this as an example. If I see that on Al Jazeera's website, okay, I got that on a tab. Now I'm going to use a second source. Can I find that same story on the AP? And now I've got it on the AP. Can I find that same story on Reuters? If I can find it on 2 or 3 sources, then I'm just reading the facts. Do they say 23 people died? Do they say 23 people died? If all 3 of them are saying 23 people died, we got 3 different news outlets with the same number. That's a set of facts. I can also cross check this with X. But like you said, a lot of independent journalism, you got to be careful with. But if you go to X and you can kind of see, because X is almost up to the minute breaking live news,
Right.
So everybody's got a cell phone. So when this train accident happened in India, all these people grab their cell phones, they're filming it, they're uploading it on X. So I can start to verify this happened today. Here's the accident. Here's people filming it. I got 3 news sources with the same set of facts, but each one of them's got their own bias, right?
Right.
Al Jazeera's got this Middle East slant for its whatever end game. Associated Press has this slant for its end game. Reuters has this slant for its whatever it's promoting. You got to watch the bias in the narratives, but I'll take the facts out of these articles. Here's the facts. A train crashed. That's a fact. 23 people died. 3 outlets are saying it. So that's a fact. You know what I mean? All this other stuff about Modi doesn't, Prime Minister India Modi doesn't pay attention to infrastructure. That's an opinion. I don't know if Prime Minister Modi doesn't pay to infrastructure or not. You said that after you said a train derailed, 23 people died.
Right.
And they'll say something like, partly to blame is Prime Minister. How do you determine what's partly? What is that?
Right.
Partly is a broad word.
That's another opinion. Yeah, that's another opinion.
That's how you know the opinion. That's where the comes. And it's all in the same sentence. They're just breaking it up with commas and then putting a period at the end. Well, I don't need that last phrase from that comma because that's an opinion. I'll just take the first 2. That's my sentence.
Yeah.
So that's kind of when I do the news, that's what I'm looking for.
Here's something you do also on your videos, Bart, that I like. You do show some videotape. You do sometimes show video. A lot of times, though, you take pictures, 4 or 5 pictures, and you'll put it there, and you'll zoom in slow or you'll pull away slow. But the picture becomes 1,000 words of what you're trying to, the factual stuff you're bringing, and it has an old school feel to it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I like that. I actually do like that. And because everybody wants to just use people's other video, but you make yours unique by taking pictures and then and you do this usually if you talk about a story for, let's say, 75 seconds, you'll probably use 4 or 5 different pictures to still help sell the message or get across the story. So I kind of like that approach.
Yeah, it's definitely old school. I think it's I don't know where it came from. I think just old sporting shows in the 60s and 70s when we watch basketball or football, when they do their opening presentations, their intros, they have like the Raiders guy in the 70s, like running down the field. And then when he gets hit, it's like a still image that they're zooming in. And then they go to the next shot. And so that's where this comes from.
Yeah.
This old school, the way they infused video and then still imaging is kind of, now it takes forever and I'm one guy and I got to make 26 videos a day. So they're not as detailed and as grandiose as I would like, because I would only get 10 done a day. But as I get, more and more down the line, I'm thinking more about maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to get faster at creating these videos so that I can do stuff like what I really want to do as far as making the video presentation, because I want to do like Trump giving a press conference and he's talking And then somewhere along there, I'll stop the video, take a snapshot, and then do the zoom in effect. So it's like a video and the pictures right after it. And it's not breaking. It's just, I'm slowing your view down,
Right.
not,
Right.
you're still looking at the same thing you were looking at in the video, kind of like that. That's what I'm trying to get at. It just takes a while when you're doing this. Sometimes you guys got to only use 4 or 5 pictures and just recycle them with a zoom in and zoom out. Plus, YouTube is pickier when it comes to videos.
Yeah.
You only got so many seconds you can use. You have to chop videos up. Everything around free use when you're reporting the news. There's limitations on what you can do. So that kind of takes time, and you can get flagged more for a copyright if you use like 10 seconds of a video or something like that. So you have to stay within the boundaries of free use. So sometimes it's easier to just do still pictures and just to do zoom in and zoom out without any video. So you're not worrying about, am I at the second limit? Does this look right? Because sometimes if Joe Biden falls down the stairs on the Air Force One, that video is longer than 4 seconds. It might take 10 seconds, right? Well, you can't really show that because you got to use only 3 or 4 seconds from that video. So it's like, well, what part of that falling down the stairs do I use? So at that point, I can just use 3 or 4 still pictures and tell the same story.
Right. And you can, and the still picture can be on the screen longer than the 3-second video. And I've found out that for me, I knew I used to get smacked 2 or 3 times, for using somebody else's video. So I went to just using audio. Okay.
Right.
I put one picture behind me, and then I would just play audio, and they never cared about audio. They don't care about using somebody's audio because you don't know which video that's coming off of. It's audio from somewhere. So I would use some audio occasionally to, and behind me would be one picture, and then I got away with that pretty well. That they don't seem to bother them as much. And also the way you do it, it's your creation. You're taking still pictures and creating your story of what we're seeing. So I like how you do that.
Plus, when I'm taking the still images, I'm not necessarily taking 100% of the image. I may crop out I may only use 25% of the image, but when you see it, it looks like a full view image. But from the original image, I just took a small piece of the original image. You know what I mean? Like all types of things like that.
Well, so Bart, how are you able to produce so much content in a day? Because I mean, most news. And if you go to bcbegley.com, you can see how it's set up. It's actually a really clean website, super simple, right in your face, not tons of ads, right? Just click on the article. I was scrolling through yesterday, and I was just looking at the date stamps on publications, and I didn't count them all, but there was at least 15, 20 articles all published on the same day. I'm curious how you're able to push out that, publish that many articles and then also go over and make a video about, I don't know if you make a video about every single one of them, but
every one of them.
How do you do that? Yeah. I mean, guys, if you're listening on this podcast, just go to bcbegley.com, bcbegley.com. He has every article. So the videos that you post also have a backup with this article.
Yes.
And your articles are very well written. It's again, very factual. It's a great source to get the current events because you don't get all that. I don't have to listen to Morning Joe. I don't need to hear Joe Scarborough to explain to me the Southern Baptist view and the redneck Riviera, and here's what we used to do when I was in Congress. I'm tired of hearing about that, Joe. I'd like to know what you're talking about, or Rachel Maddow, at night. I mean, you just can't do it. I regurgitate when I hear these people. So this is really, again, and do you see that on his website? Besides the articles, he has NVIDIA researchers demonstrate significant progress in robot training. That looks like an article I'd like to read about. Okay.
Right.
And so you click on that and boom, it's your article. It's not, they're all your content.
Yeah, I wrote those. Yeah.
So this website needs to blow up is what I'm saying. it needs to get a lot more views. And I think what I'm going to do is do some promoting on YouTube, like tonight. You know, when I do my show with Mike Around the World, I think that's a good night to promote that website and say, guys, seriously, if you're tired, Bart does all the work for you. He scans the earth, and then go there and get your news, and then you'll be a lot more educated. Okay, you won't.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'm stupid. After 30 minutes of CNN, I'm more stupider than I was when I turned it on. You know what I'm saying? I'm stupid.
I covered 3 stories.
Yeah, I think there's a race war going on outside. I don't know why Shalib has a Hamas flag outside her thing. But I'm just stupid by the time they're done, and so
I see a mostly peaceful protest.
Yeah, they're burning down the cities, and those are peaceful protesters. But and after a while, this is what gets ingrained though in the human psyche. I think, don't you think, the American public?
Absolutely. Yeah, they know what they're doing. It's when I got into it, I started to see it. I was like, there's people who are way more intelligent than I am, who are using this as a social engineering tool. It's obvious.
Yeah,
because how are ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, the Washington Post, and the New York Times every day got the same opinion about the same fact?
Right.
Is there some differentiation between
nope,
the opinion? Nope. It almost seems like they got emailed a talking point.
They do.
That article
every day.
And they fitted it into the article. So I don't know. I don't want that. It's a kind of insulting. When I watch CNN or Fox News, I've watched a lot of news, so I may think this way, and the average viewer may not. But to me, it is insulting. I don't need you to tell me how to feel or what to think about the art. I went to school. I graduated college. I'm fully aware of how to digest this information and formulate my own opinion. I don't need you to guide me like you're the shepherd and I'm the sheep.
Yep.
I need that. And it's insulting to anybody who watches it. I don't see how most people don't come across thinking this is so condescending. Just give me the facts. I'll figure it out. Even if I'm not as smart as you, I'll figure it out.
Right.
I don't have to be as smart as Anderson Cooper.
I don't want to be as smart as Anderson Cooper. I don't want to be as dumb as Anderson Cooper. I'm with you on that. I think people can figure stuff out.
Yeah, so I think just let everybody figure it out. Everybody can come to their own conclusion about what they're hearing. It may be a wrong conclusion. I'm not responsible for that. I'm just giving you the information. You have the right to know it.
Right. And it's
not my job to educate you before you read the news. You should have educated yourself or had enough education. But now that you're an adult and you're consuming the news, you should be able to formulate your own opinion. You don't need Anderson Cooper to hold your hand through Central Park and tell you how it is.
Yeah. And then if you stick around long enough and listen to Anderson Cooper and you wait for the commercial to tell you to take your 17th, COVID booster or whatever.
Brought to you.
Full News is sponsored by
Pfizer. Brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah.
Which is also reshaping the news. The big corporation is shaping the news. They'll talk about news stories only so they can help maybe push a vaccine or push a certain new pill or a new and don't even tell you what the trials are. And one thing they'll tell you is all the side effects, which scares you to death. But
right,
yeah, but you're right. I mean, even the news itself is being forced upon us, usually by big pharma and other big industries.
Right, and that's why I like to go to your website to catch a lot of the news, especially because if you were waking up in the morning, right, and just have a cup of coffee on a Saturday, and you're just like, what in the world's going on? Instead of going and turning on, whatever side you lean, MSNBC, Fox, CNN, just open up bcbegley.com, read through a couple articles, click on what interests you. Everything's covered in there. Essentially everything.
I don't know how you do it. I'm Paul. I'm sitting there looking at this. He's got archaeology. Then he covers several space, and then technology, and then he'll cover business, and then he covers politics, and then he'll cover U.S. news and then world news and just on. So he breaks it down by categories and gives you 2 or 3 key stories in that category because he's analyzed it. And it's his own written content. He is not just throwing U.S. News to report. He's not just putting links like Drudge.
Right.
He's giving you his own article from information he's gathered from maybe 3 or 4 sources. I mean, that's real journalism. That's, I took 4 years of journalism in high school. I wish I could have went to college to take journalism. But back in the day when I took journalism in high school, it was the 5, it was the who, when, where, why, and how. Those had to be in every article.
Yeah.
And it was called journalism. And they told you not to be opinionated, but to just answer give the facts, tell the story, but don't be biased. I mean, that was journalism. That's how I was trained. And then this whole world blew up with, opinionated news.
Right.
And now I'm probably the worst there is of it. Okay. Because, because that's when I was first, I always say, but wait a minute, guys, you all come parroting in here, but I was actually first out there. But now I'm saying to myself, okay, I know I look at it from a biblical perspective, but with the information I give, I want it to be factual. I don't want to talk about,
it's not,
what I'm saying?
it's not necessary. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Like if you go to my YouTube channel and you watch 4 or 5 videos, 6 videos, and it's going to take you 5, 6, 7 minutes, and you got all these stories.
Yeah, I know.
And you've got your own opinion. Maybe you've left a comment, you've left your opinion, right? But you want to see if somebody shares your opinion. You don't want to be alone in this world. That's where opinion commentary comes into play.
It does come into play.
Now to see, what does Pastor Paul feel about these stories?
Yeah.
Is he even talking about it? Does he even know? Should I leave a comment?
Yeah.
And if he does he share my opinion, or am I alone in my thoughts?
Yeah. So you're saying I'm part of the gathering of information. What is Pastor? People do want to know what I think about things that happen. So they come. They want me to share what I think about it. Now that doesn't mean I'm going to convince them of my view.
So when I watch, like Fox News, for instance, if they let me run Fox News, it would be short stories all the way through. I mean, they may be a little bit longer. If it's a complex story like Ukraine, we can spend 5 minutes talking about it, but take out all the bias. We'd roll through that, and then there would be Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters and shows like that. There would be opinion shows.
So you would want more balance. So in other words, balance, which is why I put
No, they're not alone.
That's why I put your YouTube videos on my channel, because it does bring a balance.
Right.
I got people who just want to watch BC Begley videos, basically. And then they can also go to your channel and watch them, but it does bring a balance. It does help bring a balance to what I've doing.
I think that's a better programming format for the viewer, just from a production standpoint. If I was a media company, that's what I would do. I'd pump out a lot of stories and then just have opinion shows sprinkled throughout, a morning one, an afternoon one.
Yeah. Just not every show opinionated.
Not every.
Yeah.
And I mean, so I think the election, one of the things I noticed with the election was, first of all, Trump did a phenomenal campaign where he was using what a lot of people on YouTube and alternative media sources are doing anyway, and going and they're listening to a podcast like this, or they're listening to, I don't know, Joe Rogan or podcast, or Sean Ryan podcast, whatever. Go into a lot of different sources so they can hear long form content instead of listening to poor Joe Biden get abused on a presidential debate.
Right.
I think that was extremely smart, and I think Barron Trump actually was credited with a lot of that for going out and finding, large following podcasts, and then J.D. Vance and President Trump went on every podcast you could pretty much think of that has a big enough following to get that kind of a guest on the show. But I think the mainstream media doesn't even realize how important that sort of campaign technique and strategy was. So with that, the question I wanted to ask you is, how do you see the news media evolving, or the direction it's going to go within the, next 2 to 5 years? Do you think we're going to go away from all of this opinionated Rachel Maddow and Anderson Cooper and whoever's on Fox, and shifting more to Twitter community notes and long form podcasts?
Well, what I would hope to see is a lot more originality. I hope that what I bring is original. I don't really care what everybody else is doing. When I wake up in the morning, I do the app. I scour the news, and I pick out the stories that I'm interested in, that I think the person would be interested in. So I hope more people are original and less doing what everybody else is doing. That's number one. But where I see the future of the media going is, no, I don't see opinion commentary shows leaving anytime soon. And I'll tell you what, if you've ever watched, I watched the Howard Stern movie a long time ago, and in the movie, one of the guys says that the majority of the viewers watch because they don't agree with them. They just want to see what he's going to say next.
Right.
And I think that plays into a lot of opinion commentary shows, whether it be Sean Hannity, Rachel Maddow, or Anderson Cooper. I think a lot of people don't agree with the set host. They're just trying to see maybe what outlandish thing they disagree with is said next. Maybe half the people agree with the show, right?
Yeah.
So I think those draw in ratings. I mean, you got Phil Donahue, you got Sally Jesse Raphael, but nobody could compete with Jerry Springer, right? Nobody could compete with the circus. You know what I mean? So it's the circus that draws everybody to watch it. So they want to hear what these opinion hosts might say. Will Rachel Maddow say that it's all Russia, Russia, Russia? Because, you might be thinking that she might, and then she does it, and you're tickled pink. She did it. I was right, so I don't think that that's going to go away anytime soon. But I do think that independent journalism, people with cell phones, high-resolution cameras, pictures, audio, iPhones, stuff like that, are the next wave of the future. And I think they're going to leverage platforms like Twitch, Kick, and Twitter, streaming platforms. I think people are going to record a lot more long-form, live news with their phone. Like if you see a train crash in India, it's not just going to be a couple minutes. These are going to be, I'm going to stream for the next 3 hours right here exclusively at my X channel or whatever it is. And that's going to be the new wave of media that people like the mainstream outlets are going to report on, because he's going to have so much facts and information and historical reverence in that video that they're going to use it to cite it as a source. I think that's how media will change in the future.
That's a very good point. It's really good. Now, your documentaries are amazing. Every webinar we do at paulbegleyprophecy.com always features a BC Begley documentary. And this is interesting because you are a factual guy, but in a documentary, it's not like it's an opinionation. It's factual, historical, and in some degree opinionated. It's put in a way that it kind of goes along with the story of the whole webinar. I mean, it's a true documentary approach. And I really, again, that's another balance to the other guests that I bring on. It's another element of these webinars that people really enjoy.
Yeah, it's based kind of like a timeline. I'm kind of just rolling through a timeline in a documentary form. I like that. When I Wikipedia stuff and in history just for fun, I look for things in a timeline. Like if I'm researching the Roman Empire, I like to do it in a nice timeline with the big events, and I can zoom in and out and see what all happened and go year by year and 10 years by 10 years, or whatever it is, emperor by emperor, however I want to do it, however deep I want to get to it. So when I make a documentary, I'm viewing it as a timeline. And then, like you said, there's opinions and stuff that can be put
But it's not overwhelming. It's not overwhelming opinionated. It's more historical timeline, and yet it sticks with the message. And I really appreciate those. And that's why, folks, when you get our webinars, you don't just get maybe 5 or 6 interviews or presentations, but you get a documentary too. Okay, which in sometimes I think the documentary itself is. There's been some of the webinars. It's probably been the best presentation of the category, and I think that's why you've done a great job with those.
Thank you.
So Bart, actually, I think your documentaries, are they on your Patreon page as well as the webinars?
Yeah, so I have on my Patreon, I have more documentaries than my YouTube.
Okay.
The Patreon is like the webinars, my YouTube, and then some I do exclusively just for Patreon.
So how do people find your Patreon channel?
My Patreon, I believe, is BC Begley at Patreon.
Yeah, you gave me a link before the show. Is patreon.com/BC Begley.
Yeah, so BC Begley at Patreon is my Patreon. And you don't have to subscribe now. Patreon lets you buy, you can buy just one documentary at a time. So there's subscribers, and then you can just purchase individual videos. Patreon's trying to compete, so the platform switched up a little bit. It's a nice platform.
And then, so Bart, do you have any advice for someone that might be thinking about, I want to try my hand at some freelance journaling? What kind of advice would you give somebody like that?
If I had to give anybody advice on what to do to be a journalist, I would say go Google James O'Keefe, because that type of journalism that gotcha, that dress in a costume and getcha, I think is the new wave of what's going to be huge in the media. I think more people should research James O'Keefe.
Well, he was an incredibly controversial guy because, man, he would take on the toughest the darkest subjects, the things that the media ignored.
Right.
And this guy would go in there and blow the lid off the thing.
And then I would tell people, after you research James O'Keefe, research Catherine Heritage. She used to work at CBS. She covers everything, and she doesn't care if she gets fired doing it. And I follow her on X, and she is a mainstream journalist telling the truth. And
what's her name?
The fresh air, Catherine Heritage. And she is amazing. So she got fired from CBS. She covers everything that everybody's scared to cover. Right now, she's in Guantanamo Bay. She broke that story. She breaks original stories because she's not afraid to go down there and do the work. So if you don't want to dress up in a costume and bust somebody at the Pentagon like James O'Keefe does, you can be a true investigative journalist. Go there, find things that are happening through tips and sources, and break that story. If you want to be a content creator and compete with everybody else in the world of news, you should merge those two people together and come up with something original, because those two people, I think, are the leading in originality when it comes to journalism today.
And I think that's really good advice for people to go and look at those two. I haven't heard of the second reporter that you mentioned, but I know that James O'Keefe I believe, started Project Veritas.
He did.
And then they ended up doing a hostile takeover and pretty much kicking him out of his own company. And this was after he did an undercover bust of a Pfizer executive during the COVID, whatever 3 or 4 years that was in our lives.
Right. Yeah, some people don't like his type of journalism, but and it's not for everybody. But if it's not for you, you can always be what Catherine Heritage does, and she goes down there and is an old school investigative reporter who does due diligence and breaks big stories nobody's heard of, and that is what the mainstream media used to do, that they don't do anymore. So it's nice to have her around doing her work too, because she's exposed and covered a lot of things that have made it huge impact these last 4 or 5 years.
And then I also wanted to ask, Bart, do you have any um, upcoming projects that you're working on or you're excited about? I would love to see, a 30, 45-minute documentary that you produce. It would probably take you a while to do, but do you have anything like that coming out?
Yeah, I do have plans for longer form documentaries. I want to get into making longer form documentaries. And I'll break this exclusively here, because I haven't actually put one video up yet, but I am working on a news section for my YouTube channel. Of course, I've got all my news and categories. Then at the bottom, I have historical documentaries. But what I want to do is I want to create a King James Version illustrated audio Bible. And I want to do each video as a chapter. There's, I think, 1,100 and something chapters in the Bible. So I want to do each chapter as a video, and I want to use AI to do image generation creation, and you kind of do my video form, zoom in, zoom out on still pictures, but on these AI video image generation, so that I can visually take people through the entire Bible. King James Version will be the only words that will be spoken through the narrator, me, and we'll take you through a visual presentation with an audio overlay. So what I want to do is create, I don't think one's actually out there. I think
I don't
audio, but
I was going to say that would be the first one ever. I don't believe anyone's ever done that. It would be a phenomenal, it would be phenomenal, really.
I've already got couple chapters started, so you'll see them uploaded here soon in a new section at the bottom of the YouTube channel. That'll be the KJV Illustrated Audio Bible.
Oh, cool. I think that's actually a really cool idea. And I was, when you were talking about that, I was just thinking, what kind of target audience do you think you would use? Because me just thinking about it, because I got, a 9 and a 4-year-old, I'm thinking if you were to, have a target audience of pretty much everybody, you could not just make it, so cartoony for children, but also for adults to appreciate and enjoy as well. Did you have a audience in mind already?
Yeah, so I'm going to break it up into, like I said, each chapter will be its own individual video. Now, the Bible is pleasant for the most of the part, but there are wars in the Bible, right?
Right.
So when you're in a chapter of the Bible that covers an ancient war, maybe in the Old Testament, I mean, the image generation is going to be that of war. So if for a parent or anybody, I'm not going to get too graphic. These are going to be viewable for everybody of every age. These are going to be soft images. If it's a war, it's going to be like some Where's Waldo soft image. It's not going to be graphic where it's going to make kids cry or
right.
Well, these are all going to be appropriate for all age groups. But the reason why I break it down into chapters is because if there's a specific chapter, like Jonah and the whale or something, you can just go right to it and then have your child watch that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. David and Goliath, you can go to those chapters. And I think it's a phenomenal idea. It's a great project. I would think this is probably about a 2-year project at the least. But you're breaking that today, so you should get on that, because I can tell you, in my mind was racing on how to promote that for you, or how to help market that, because the market for that would be large. I mean, I know people right now who, when they go to bed at night, they put the Bible on an audio and they just let it play. There are people who have a hard time going to sleep. If yours was video audio, then they would actually put it up on cast it onto their television screen, and they would let it just play, and they would watch, and they would listen.
It would be in the form of a playlist.
Yeah.
So it would start Genesis 1, and you'd go all the way to Revelation.
Yeah, or if they want
to use it for story time with
with the kids.
Night.
Yeah, pick the ones you want.
And hopefully, if I can promote it right, I want to promote it to youth groups and Sunday schools all across America and the world. You can easily interpret it to another language. And, if you're teaching your Sunday school class and you want a video illustrated chapter that You can play that video. It take 5-6 minutes to go through a chapter, depending on how long the chapter is, and then you can teach your lesson. So I think it works with pastors, Sunday school teachers, youth leaders, things like that. You know what I mean? Hopefully they see the value.
I'd say get to work on this one. This is a great idea. Really, I'm telling you right now. And I'm already thinking of the potential book companies that would probably want to sign you.
Buy that from you.
Yeah, really, seriously. And so that they could, get in on it, because they can, and that means they can blow it across major bookstores across the world, online, as well as packaged.
Right.
I mean, just be a phenomenal idea. So, yeah, get that rolling. Yeah, I say amen to that. I get a high five on that.
On the YouTube channel soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so Bart, you gave me tons of places we can find you. Can you tell us maybe where to start at? I have bcbegley.com, or where else can we find you at? YouTube?
If you want to read news articles, you can go to my website, bcbegley.com. If you want to watch my YouTube videos, I would just go to YouTube. If you don't like YouTube and you're on Rumble, you can always visit me on Rumble. The same content on YouTube is on Rumble, but I don't have all the fancy playlists and everything. That's all set up at my main channel at YouTube. So that's where I would direct all my traffic to. I also post all my videos on X. So if you follow me on X, it's just like my YouTube channel. You're just going to get videos all day long on there as well. And then, of course, if you want to subscribe to my Patreon and see more historical documentaries or all of my documentaries from webinars and things like that, you can subscribe to my Patreon.
Good. Hey, I tell you, this has been a very informative session. Bart, you're doing a great work. And I think a lot of people, once they listen to this podcast or watch it, they're going to have a great appreciation for the work you do and the capability you have to decipher the news and to find the truth and to give people an opportunity to think for themselves. And I just think it's just really, it's a missing art. It's a forgotten art. But in this world we live in, it's very necessary so that people can make the decisions themselves by hearing the factual news, and you're doing it in a modern way. It's pretty amazing.
Hopefully, BC Begley, we just introduced him to the Paul Begley podcast on here, and hopefully down the line, he also will serve as one of our co-hosts on the show as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on the Paul Begley Podcast. New episodes will be released every Tuesday on all major podcast streaming platforms. For a video recording of this episode, you can watch and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Paul Begley Podcast. Hey, guys, we want you to connect with us. Follow us on X and Twitter at Paul Begley Pod. We'd love to hear your questions you want us to answer on the show. For additional Paul Begley content, go to our website at paulbegleyprophecy.org. If you've thought about it, we'll talk about it. Paul Begley Podcast.